Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on because I think it's something that all retailers struggle with, and we haven't really talked about it here, which is employee retainment and hiring. Why don't you give everyone an introduction to yourself and your brand?
Sure. So I have a very diverse background, but I owned a massage envy spa for a while, and I sold in about 2016. And that's kind of where I started hitting my head against what am I doing as far as hiring and keeping my team, especially the front desk. And from there, I realized, well, I need to kind of go back on my training because I had a ton of training in hiring and figure out what works in this realm. And I did and ended up creating a whole business out of it. And that's what brought me here. But that was, that was 2016 that I sold and started doing it full time.
Wow. Okay, so the when you had mentioned the front desk being the most challenging, why was that?
Well, one thing I realized with our front desk, and this is I think this connects a lot with retail, is we we were looking for people who were great at customer service. And because we were a spa, and really any business, you're often looking for good, people. The thing is, our role was heavy sales focused. They had to hit certain sales targets. We had a lot of retail as well. So they had retail goals, they had membership goals, and they were juggling appointments and, members' questions and things like that. And we did not in the beginning give a true idea of what the role is. I mean, you think spa, oh, that's got to be a relaxing job sitting at the front desk of the spa.
Mm.
But it really wasn't. It was, I felt for my front desk people. I was up there quite a bit in the beginning as well. There was a lot to juggle. And once we started to focus on, okay, what do we really need? And what is this job truly about? And how do we get that across to candidates? Then people started weeding themselves out, which was great. And we started finding people who were a good fit.
Would you say that was the job description? Because I have an account or I had an account that has constantly gone through managers and they have yet to have a job description or even just an employee handbook. And they what would happen is the employee knew they were the quote manager and they had their opening closing scheduling they understood, but then the owner would continue to lob stuff in their lap and the
Mhm.
person would get overwhelmed and then suddenly not be able to do the job they were originally hired for. And then now the owner's angry. And I kept saying, but you don't have a job description. And by continuing to lob things on them, what they think is their job description, they can't do because they're overwhelmed by what you keep throwing in their lap. Is that part of the equation of what you went through?
Yes, but I think that's a lot deeper. And it's also a leadership role, right, that you're talking about. And I see that happen uh, quite a bit. And that's why we typically start in what we call our defined stage with our clients and to talk about what does this job really need and what are the results you're looking for.
Mm.
We also define job description and job posting very differently. They might look similar in certain ways, but they each have a different job, if you will. The job description is that internal document, that agreement between the employee and the employer of what's expected of them from the role and what results are needed to be successful. The posting is a marketing piece.
Mm.
And it does take a lot of what's in the job description in it, but it's written in a way that attracts the right people and, dare I say, repels the people who would not like
Yeah.
the. So for a role like that, I might even I'd probably put something in the posting about, you thrive at challenges that come out of nowhere. Something I would work on the wordsmithing a little bit, but give them a true idea of what the job's going to be like and what it's like working with the owner. Some people might actually really like a role like that, and then others, as you said, don't. But I do think you're right in that role needs to be truly defined
Yeah.
first. There can be certain projects, of course, that get added, but from what you're describing, it sounds like it's
I think
too much.
it created so much chaos and so much stress for the poor person that was hired in, not knowing that all this other stuff was coming. And then, the owner, their expectation that the person could handle. It's like, did you talk about any of these things? Like, or are you just disappointed that the person can't I mean, it just, because I come out of corporate and I didn't have to deal with any of the hirings. And in anthropology, it's split between, I was part of the merchandising management, and then there's the operation management, and they're the ones who, and it is an art to hire people, to be able to verbalize what the job is, like you're saying, the marketing and the thing. And definitely an art form to be able to manage people and have them thrive. And I think right now, why this conversation was so interesting to me is like, because I keep hearing, and it's like, it seems like, no, it hasn't changed since the pandemic. I believe it has, but everyone's like, I can't find anybody. No one wants to work. No one, everyone blames it on whatever this generation is. And like, they don't want to do anything. And, there's a combination of problems that I hear, but I feel like there are some amazing hires out there. And I feel like part of the mistakes of what they're perceiving their employees are making are, a lot of it is what the person that hired them made, that didn't realize that the person wasn't a good match, or whatnot. But right now I just had a conversation with Bob from Whizbang, and with the tariff situation going on, everyone is equally as freaked out. And his thing was, well, right now, because sales are obviously going to be down, this is the time to look at your staff, and the people that are not performing, you kind of let stay on, and it hasn't been a big deal, and that you've let them kind of go into cruise mode. This is the time where you start taking these people out and really looking at the people who are driving your business and who have the sales to back it up. For when it is slow, they have a solid sales track record that you can say, this is why you're here, because you're performing, and this is why you are not working out, because that the numbers now at this point really matter. And I think that is like super important to talk about right now.
Yeah, but I believe it was always important, right? But now the magnifying glass is on it. But we often did that where people who had high closing ratios, we would give them first choice of hours and give them more hours. And if people, were not closing, we would give them the assistance they needed. But if they weren't making the effort, or it just really didn't fit with who they were, because some people hate sales, and I completely understand that. But then the role wasn't right for them. But I agree, you need to always be ready for, if something happens and business is going to be slow, to just focus on who's going to help you keep those numbers up.
I think it's the only thing you can control at this point.
Right.
I mean, I think that was Bob's other point, was like, this is really like, of all the situations that are going on right now, the only thing you can control is, who you have on your team that is a solid salesperson. And I think that right now that's the only thing you can control, I guess, long story short. Tell everyone a little bit about how you ended up, you sold your brand, and then you started this agency. How does this agency work?
Sure. So actually, I started AHA just a few years into having my spa. It originally came out of an old colleague asking me if I could do some consulting work for them. But it's sort of evolved since then to what it is today. And I don't like to really call us a recruitment firm. Because we're not transactional. It's more about working with businesses, and we focus on businesses that hire hourly employees, that they're typically all, looking for employees fairly regularly. They usually will have multiple locations. Sometimes it's not multiple brick and mortar locations. Sometimes it's they have multiple areas they service, so they have employees in different parts of the country or state. And we look at what they're doing for hiring, what's working, what's not working. It usually involves us going in and setting up for them some sort of tech stack, something that's easy to stay on top of, or looking at the tech stack they already have and seeing what we can do with it, adding some automation. We use quite a bit of AI and using that to streamline the process, but also to build an employer brand for them. I'm a big fan of constantly promoting why you're a great place to work and being authentic about it, of course, not just saying, hey, we're a great place to work, but saying, why and what that looks like. So a lot of our clients, they usually will start as a consulting project because each one is so different in what their needs are. And so once we get them up to the point where they have a hiring system in place, then they typically move into our AHA Hire program, which we kind of call a maintenance program, but it's more of we're their support for hiring, onboarding, retaining their team. And anytime anything needs some fixing in their software, their ATS, we'll go in. But one of the big things we're constantly doing is providing recruitment marketing posts for social media, or we have a video partner to help them do some videos on what it's like to work there, and just providing interview support. We do a lot of training on how to do an effective interview and creating customized interview questions for them. So we're very much talent partners instead of what I would consider recruiters. And we do sourcing if they need, they have a specific role that they're having a very difficult time filling. Usually it's a management level, but we're more of a partner with them, setting up campaigns.
What do some of the successful social media, as far as like promoting your brand, what does that look like? So people have a kind of an idea of what they could possibly do to shine a light on their brand.
It can be as simple as a day in a life. And I remember actually years ago, we worked with a wedding shop. And one of the things they did that was their idea, and I just loved it, was they did an interview style video, just, with like a phone. And one person interviewed one of their bridal stylists because we were recruiting bridal stylists for them. And that bridal stylist happened to be engaged and getting married soon. So there was like two kind of aspects of it. So she was interviewing her about what it's like to be a bridal stylist, and that now that she's looking for a dress, does that change her outlook on how to do it? What makes a successful bridal stylist? I just thought it was very well done. So we used it a lot in promoting working there. We recently were working with Nothing But Cakes franchisee. And when we did our discovery session with her and her team, one of the things that the franchisee mentioned was how when we're working on, when we're creating the cakes, we're thinking about, and she said it a lot more eloquently than I'm going to say it, but she said some sort of quote around, we think about our grandmothers or our daughters or whoever, is special, getting this cake and how special it needs to be for them. And so we took her actual quote and we did put it in some of the job postings, but we also did a picture of her holding a cake with the quote on there. And then we wrote a little bit about it. So, things like that, there's so much you can do creatively. Even what is the hiring process like? I know I always mention L'Oreal because I feel like they do. I follow them on LinkedIn, and they do some great videos of what it's like for their hiring process. And then once you're hired, what it's like, what is it like behind the scenes?
At the
So,
culture of the company.
mhm.
I think when I think about all the interviews that when I have done interviews, it's funny, we never talked about the culture of the company. We never talked about what it was like. It was really always based on like, what can you do? And what the job responsibilities were versus what a great company this is and all the pluses and the perks and whatnot. And I think that that's, when I think about it, it's like, I don't even remember if I got when I was interviewed for Anthro, if I even received that information, like where it was about the company culture versus just the job or what you're going to do.
But we always focus on the core values, and a lot of them will have, these set, nicely written core values, but nobody really knows what they are or uses them. But so we talk about, well, how can we bring them alive on a daily basis? How are they already alive and you don't even realize it? And then we put that into the job posting, to the marketing. This is how this core value shows up for us. And it's amazing the number of candidates who will mention, that part where you talked about your core values. That's what jumped out at me.
Is that in a job listing or is that?
We always put it in the job posting.
So
And
what does a successful job listing look like?
we have a very specific formula. I like to start with 4 to 5 questions. And we usually write these questions last because we want the questions to essentially summarize what the needs are of the job. So that because when somebody's searching for a job, it's like, the Google search, where you're just seeing, if you're an Indeed or even Google, you're only going to see the first couple of lines. So if you start with something boring of, we're looking for a retail manager or whatever, instead of an engaging question that jumps out at people, they're just going to keep going.
So brilliant.
So that's why I've been doing this for over a decade, and it works so well. And I will, if for your listeners, I have a free GPT. If they go to jobpostingwizard.com, they don't have to fill out a form or anything.
Make sure we have a link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, I can send it to you, but it just brings you right to Chat GPT, and you can have the free version. But I actually put our formula, I baked it into that GPT. Now, I will say, the more information you feed it, because it is going to ask you questions, you're not going to go in there and say, I need a retail manager. It's going to ask you about stories of your best manager or your best retail associate, or what, it's you're going to have to do a little bit of work if
But
you
I
want
love that. I think that what I love about that is I think it forces the retailer, whoever is hiring, I feel like it forces them to think differently than how they have always thought. Again, like where you're not even thinking about your company culture, what amazing place it is to work, like, talking about best practices or your managers and the amazing jobs that they do or what have you. But I think that forces you to really think differently.
It does. And I've had people who will try out the GPT, or even when I used to have it as a form, to fill it out. And they'd be like, I never thought of these things before. It never occurred to me to think of this and to have to, think about who my best employees were in the past and what made them so great, or who wasn't a great fit. And what's an example that shows that, or what will tell me, or what will they know that they are successful after 30 days? What results am I going to see? or 60 days or 90 days. What is that going to look like? Are they going to know all the products? Are they going to be very good at the POS? Different things like that. What are you looking for? What will make them, to you, say that they're successful? And the more you communicate to them, the more they'll have a roadmap of how to be successful, and it won't be so difficult for them to figure out, because sometimes we're really not sure what the expectations are.
Yeah. I mean, I communication, I've always said, is key. And, you can't expect your team members to be mind readers. And I have situations where there's stores that don't understand why the team doesn't understand where to place merchandise when it comes in. It's like, can't they tell that this tape is different from this tape? And, and I said to somebody that you have to figure, well, I'm going to take it back. I worked at Peking Handicraft, and Peter, who I adore, we would do all the show setups. Well, Peter was customer service. Like, he wasn't a merchandiser, and they sent him to do this setup with us. And I was asking him to do something, and he did it wrong. And I was like, what? I don't understand why you're not getting it. He's like, look, I'm a customer service person. I don't get it. And it dawned on me. It's like, of course. Why would you know? Like, why, like, and me not communicating exactly what I needed and just expecting. And it's like that saying, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Communication is the key to everything. I mean, you hear it all the time, but sometimes you just need to break it down and understand what does that mean, and how one person communicates is different than the other.
Yeah. What are some of the mistakes that you see in the hiring process that you've kind of guided people?
Well, number one, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but when we first started, I can't tell you how many people who I would see, and I still see this, but a little bit different, and I'll tell you why. They would go on to Indeed and just say, "Ooh, that sounds like what I want," and copy and paste it, maybe make some minor changes, but then repost it as what they want. And I mean, that was a pretty common practice.
I
It
bet.
may still even be today, for all I know. And if you're not really sure about what you need and spend that time in the beginning to put out there who you're going to attract, then of course you're going to attract the wrong people. And when you're screening them, there's going to be a huge disconnect. Another mistake I've been seeing recently is, and I just had this with a client a few months ago, where they were using an assessment. And I'm not saying I'm not a fan of assessments. I am. I'm certified in a few. I just feel like they need to be used in a specific way and need to align with everything else you're doing. And so this gentleman had an assessment, and he was happy with what, the assessment. Like, I think he put a lot of work into it with whoever sold him the assessment, because we weren't involved in that, in developing the model. And so I asked him, because I was watching the result of the assessments coming back on the people that we were attracting for his jobs, and nobody was even coming close to meeting the minimum on this assessment. I'm like, there's a disconnect here. So I say, could you send me the description of the role that this is, in a verbal form? So he did. He just got it from, you just go to the system and download it. And so I reviewed it. And now that I also have AI available to me, I took what I saw from that and did a comparison to the job posting that we had created based on our discovery
The
with him.
assessment was different than the job. Okay.
It was completely different. What we were putting out there of what we wanted to attract was so different than what this assessment was looking for. So of course we're not going to have anybody who meets the requirement. I mean, it would be just a shot in the dark. So then we went back to the drawing board, and I said, well, this is what you said during your discovery session. of what was most important to you, but here's what I'm reading in the assessment. And so we redid everything so that we were sure of what we wanted, and then made sure the assessment matched what we were putting out there in the posting. And all of a sudden, we were getting people who were passing the assessment or hitting the numbers we wanted. He's like, "This is incredible. This is I've never had so many people do well on the assessment." I'm like, "Well, because we were putting out like a poster, so to speak, of, we want people with red shoes." And then we were asking them to fill out a questionnaire saying, we only want people with blue shoes, so that is a huge mistake that sometimes it takes a little detective work to find.
Okay, so take me back to what this assessment is, because I'm assuming big box brands and bigger companies use these assessments. I've never heard of this. And it may be because I'm out of the retail world for so long, but I've never heard of an assessment. And like, what do you give them before the person starts, or is this something you give them when they're already working?
Okay, so I should preface this by there are a lot of pre-hire assessments, and I'm not talking about big brands. This client was in-home services. He's not a big brand. He has 8 areas he services, and does a lot of hiring, but he's not a huge brand that you would have heard of. But a lot of companies use what's called pre-hire assessment. And there are a couple of reasons they use it. One is to try to weed through applications quickly and only look at the ones that score in the way, that they think would then be successful in the job. I am a fan of assessments. I'm not a fan of using them as the first part of the screening process, because I feel like assessments are only as good as the conversation they create. So I actually, depending upon how valid the assessment is, I like using them later on in the process, maybe after the first video interview, like after you've spoken to the candidate in some way, shape, or form at least once, and then using the assessment as a way to go deeper, saying, "Oh, because here are some of the things that came up with the assessment. Do you agree with this?" Or maybe you're not so direct about it, but you're asking them questions around what the assessment's saying to see if it's accurate, or how does it really show up? Because sometimes the assessment might say they're very reserved. I don't think they'll be great in a retail sales situation. Well, I'll tell you, I was an extremely shy person in high school, and I came out of my shell by getting a retail job as soon as I hit college, and I was one of the best salespeople at Brookstone. So, you can't really judge a person always by that. You have to see what the potential is and really speak with them.
Does that mean it kind of lengthens your time of like going through things, since you were possibly counting on that to go through them quicker?
I'll tell you what I do. And a lot of candidates are not happy with this, but sometimes we have to figure out a way to make the process more streamlined. And we've been doing this for over a decade, even before COVID. It's become more prevalent, but we do one-way videos. So I have, different one-way video company softwares that I work with, and I'll tell you what it is. So we install it into the process for the client. And what happens is somebody applies, right? And we often will send this to everybody, because if it's an entry-level position, then instead of looking at resumes, I really just want to kind of get a taste of you, who you are, especially if it's a customer-facing role. then I want to get that video. So they'll get a link and they can do it on their phone, their computer, whatever is easiest for them. A lot of them will do it on their phone, and it will walk them through, okay, you know, why would you like to join our team? And usually the questions are a little deeper than that, but it's about 3 questions, maybe 4 if it's a leadership role. They get up to 2 or 3 minutes to respond. They can retake it. Often I'll set it that they can retake it as often as they want, just to, give them that opportunity. And that way we give them 3 days to do it, and they can do it on their own schedule, send it to us, and then we screen it. Now, a lot of people refuse to do it.
Why?
Well, they don't want to take the time. They'd rather just talk on the phone, or they really weren't that interested in the job in the first place. And this is asking for extra effort.
It
Great.
reminds me of what, my friend who is an actor, that during COVID, everyone was having to do their own self audition tapes, and they would send in, this is what you're up for, even modeling. Like it was, this is what the client is, this is what the product is, and then here's what we want to hear you say. And they'd film themselves and they send it in, and which was always like so weird to me. But that's what COVID created. And now it's still, they're still doing it. It's now become common practice.
Yeah, we were working with the South Florida Cold Stone Creameries down here way years before COVID hit. We've been their partner for talent for a long time. And they were our only only retail client that did not close during COVID. As a matter of fact, they needed to hire because they lost all of their employees, mainly because most of their employees were around 16 to 18, and the parents didn't want their kids, out in public. So, but they had always done their recruitment for, their crew using these big in-person auditions. It's something that Cold Stone has been doing, for a long time. It's part of their culture. And they'd get 50, 60, even 70 people on, a morning come for these auditions that would last all day. It's incredible to watch.
It's like it's a true talent search.
It really is. And then all of a sudden they needed more people at once than they ever did, because they had this big, avalanche of people leaving, and because of COVID, nothing because of them. But they needed to stay open. So they called me and they said, what do we do? And I said, well, let's do one-way videos. And within 24 hours, we had a whole system up for the one-way videos, and it worked so well that they still use it today for their manager interviews. I think I'm hoping they went back to the last year. I was really encouraging them to move back to their in-person auditions, since it was, such a big part of who they are. But it really saved them during COVID.
Well, I feel like it also, the one way, you're right. You're able to kind of, because I know what I sound like on paper, and I know when I talk to people and I'm talking about their displays and their merchandise, like the more excited I get, the more excited they get. And it's that theory, energy creates energy, is what Fred Siegel used to say. And it's like, you could read something and on paper they look amazing, and then they get in front of you and it's just like no personality. And I remember, like, one of the girls, when I had my stores at Fred Siegel, one of the girls I picked out of, I almost want to say it was a Cold Stone Creamery. She was 14. It was her first job. Her parents let her, she was on a work permit, and she was so animated and so excited and had so much energy. And she had a line 1 million people long, and every single person that walked in, I'll be right with you, I'm so sorry. Because that's like my biggest peeve when I go into stores. There's a line and the person does not look up, doesn't say, I'll be right with you, hey guys, I'm so sorry, thanks for your patience. What, like, literally only looks at the person, or doesn't look at them at all, and like I get that all the time in delis. It's like I don't know what it is about the deli department at this one store. It's like everyone is in the back, they see you, they look at you, they put their head down, and like, but this little girl was so amazing. And I was like, please come and work with me. And she was my number one salesperson. And I don't think if I read that on a piece of paper, I'm 14 years old, I have a work permit, I work here, blah, blah. That doesn't read. And it's like, I love that idea.
Yeah, and I'll also give you an idea based on that story you just shared. Uh, we often will recommend getting little business cards made. We at some point we had the URL that you made an
Mm,
impression.com. And so if you run into somebody like this young woman you're talking about, or you had some amazing service at a restaurant, you just leave the card
that's brilliant.
on it, and then they go to the website, and you just say, if you're ever looking for an opportunity, this is my name, so write down that I'm the one that referred you, and here's, we do hiring for whatever, Cold Stone, anthropology, but whatever it is.
Brilliant. I love that because I will often tell like the owners what they're looking for someone. I'm like, go out and shop other stores. And then it becomes like I've met someone I love, but I don't even know how to begin to bring up that conversation, which I don't really know how to coach them out of that, but I do know shopping other stores, especially people that are selling things that are like your stores. If you see them and they're on fire and they're like entertaining and engaging and like those are the people you want working for you. And it's like it's I love that idea of making a card and just casually passing it to me like you made an impression, if you're ever interested, and that's like the easiest way to break through a conversation. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Then they have it, they hold on to it, and it might not be next week, but it may even be next year, but and it made their day too. It's great to leave with a tip too, if it's, a server. I actually got the idea because I think I was out to lunch with a friend of mine who's a chiropractor, and with the tip, she left a business card, just as, like a marketing thing. And I'm like, we should do that for recruiting, if somebody really impresses us. So that's why we made the You Made an Impression program.
So what are some tips of now you've had your interview and now the person's sitting in front of you, like what are some of the what are some of the challenges that people come up with and really conveying everything you've talked about in these interviews? Like what are some of the mistakes people make and what are some things that you can suggest?
Okay, so I'm actually gonna, if you don't mind, touch on interviewing a bit, because one of the mistakes I see, once you're actually interviewing them, you're on the phone, you're on Zoom, you're in face to face, is we often, and I've made this mistake for years, we'll just kind of get caught up if the candidate is saying all the right things. And sometimes we'll walk away and we'll think, oh my God, they were so impressive. But if you think back, what did they actually say they've done?
Mm.
If they start just using generalities or say, we did this, or you should, hear that a lot. You should do this. So when I talk to people about how to interview effectively, I always say to ask for specific examples. So here's my interview formula. You start with almost every question with, could you share? And the reason you say, could you share, is it makes it more conversational. It makes it feel like they have a choice. Because we used to, when I was originally trained, all of our interview questions started with like, give me or tell me. And, sometimes I was even trained on make them feel like there's a big light on them. And,
Oh my God.
everybody, I've heard so many different ways of interviewing. And really, it's just about making them feel as comfortable as possible so that they will feel on the offensive. So we would start with, could you share a specific example? And then something related to the job. It could be as simple as, could you share a specific example of a time you had a very difficult customer.
Mm.
And do not say, how did you resolve it? How did you make them happy? How did you, show amazing customer service? You just leave it at you had a customer. So every question is essentially asking about past challenges and how they showed up. Our problem with interviewing is we want to help them out. So we give away the answer and we'll say, how did you hit it out of the park for your customers? Or, you're telling them what you want to hear, and everybody can come up with at least one good story.
So if you have them, if you are saying, like, can you tell me about, your worst customer service? It, I think every retailer is gonna be like, if the person doesn't wrap it up like with how they did resolve it, I feel like the retailer's gonna be like, and is that part of the questioning? It's like you just kind of leave it there, like you didn't explain it, so I'm gonna assume that it didn't get resolved, or because I think all of us are gonna be like, "Ooh, I just want to know."
Okay, so what I know, and I'm the same way. It takes a lot of practice to start interviewing this way. It took me a long time to feel comfortable with it, and sometimes I do catch myself falling back. But what you would do is, okay, so somebody starts telling you a story of some customer that they just had the most difficult time with, right? And they just leave it there. And you pause and you're wait, you might want to say, what happened next? And they might say, oh, well, they stormed out really angry. Oh, okay. And then move on. Don't give them, the good candidates for most of the questions, and you're looking for patterns here. Not everybody is going to be perfect, right? You want to look for 80 to 85% pattern of some good responses. But the good candidates are going to tell you either how they resolved it or what they learned from it so that they knew how to resolve it in the future.
Uh,
Um, the bad ones, I shouldn't use the word bad, but the people who probably aren't the right fit for that kind of role are going to complain more as the more you ask these type of questions,
mm.
and are not going to share this. But if you had said to them, tell me how you resolve a complaint from a difficult customer, they probably will come up with something,
Well,
right?
I think about, so one of my biggest peeves with any employee situation is, and I will say this because I used to do it and I got called out where, it's my situation was I was in a restaurant. We're supposed to marry the catch ups and I didn't, and I got called out, and my standard answer was, I know, I know, I know, I know. And my boss finally, excuse my language, my boss was like, if you fucking know, why do you fucking keep doing it? And it was like, I don't know. Like I will often run into what I call yes men. And it's like you will say, so what happened with this and why, like we just set this up. What happened? What, well, like, oh, gotcha, boss, gotcha. I understand, boss. Like, and it's like a yes man answer, and it's not really even, and I see those in interviews as well. And it's like this, if sounds like this type of interviewing lets them just kind of be that yes man, and you be able to see like, oh, I see this is this type of personality, and I'm not going to get the answer because you're a yes man. It's like this.
Yeah. And I always say ask for as many details as you can, because it's a lot of people are going, even though you'll say specific example. And when I write interview guides, every single question, specific example will be capitalized. Just to remind the interviewer of two things. One, to emphasize, I'm looking for a specific example, and two, to listen for specific examples. So even though you're asking that, you're still going to get quite a few candidates who will probably talk in generalities and say, oh, yes, we've had lots of difficult customers, but you do what you can to help them. And I always make sure they go away happy. It's probably an answer a lot of us, something similar, have heard before. So I would say, oh, That's great. Could you tell me about a specific customer and situation? You can take a minute to
Mm.
don't tell me their name. I don't want to know their name, but I want you to walk me through exactly what happened. And if they continue to talk in generalities, then I move on. Because sometimes they will, or they'll say, I can't think of anybody. And if somebody's been working in customer service can't think of anybody, then
Still
that,
think of.
yeah. I mean, I can think of somebody from 30 years ago. And so like, well, actually, oh my God, it's more than 30 years ago. And those things stick with you usually.
Tell people a little bit about how you work with clients and what it looks like.
We're very customized. We first will just have a conversation with you to get a feel for what are your needs? How much hiring do you need to do on a regular basis? What are your most difficult roles? What are you doing now? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And and then we'll focus in on, what are your pressing needs? Sometimes they need a complete overhaul of their tech stack or what's an applicant tracking system. So we'll go into a lot of them. They might not have an applicant tracking system, so they might be getting all of their resumes or applications just through Indeed or email. And so we'll talk about what are some options that are maybe low cost that will make it easier for them and how we can set it up for them. We'll go through and talk about some of the recruitment marketing and employer branding services we can offer. But if they decide to work with us, it always starts with that 90-minute discovery session and where we're really diving in to learn about their culture and who's successful in the different roles that they need to fill.
What are some of the best places for retailers to put job job postings out on? I know Indeed, but where are some other places that you suggest? Because I think some people still will throw a sign in the window and sometimes have good response, but I think
Yeah.
that
I,
now looking at it, it has to get a little
I,
bit.
I'm not opposed to the sign in the window as long as it has a QR code that goes to a landing page that makes it easy for people to apply. You want it to be a quick form. You want it to be really easy for somebody to apply from their phone because that's how most people will. Indeed, I go back and forth on Indeed. Social media, and we always hit Indeed for retail type roles because it's kind of like you just want to make sure you hit it, but I wouldn't say it's the only go-to. Social media is really the best. I would say to do what you can to nurture candidates that you've had interested in your roles before. I can't tell you how many clients come to us and they say, we can't find any good candidates. And I'll go into however they're keeping their applications. And because they don't have a way to actually search past candidates in a easy way, they don't realize the gold mine of applicants. They're
When you say nurture, it's basically continuing to look and keep the better applicants top of mind.
yeah, and even just sending out emails, might be a success of one of their employees, or it might just be one of those day in the life videos I talked about. Or even if you're not doing ongoing nurturing, just have a searchable database. So when you need, a retail associate, because you end up having an opening you weren't expecting, and you need somebody quickly, before I'd even place an ad, I'd go into the database, and I guarantee you, if you've been around a while, you might have 30 to 100. I've seen even more than 100 past applicants who were never even screened because you filled the job before you got to them.
Mm.
Or you ended up, you know, you had several people at one time that you liked, so you just said, you forgot about them. You just,
I,
sent them on their way. I can't tell you how many good candidates we're all sitting on. Now, they may not need a job at this point in time, but if you have an easy way to reach out to them through text, through email, hey, you showed interest in the past to work with us. We now have a role. It's most of the hours are Saturday afternoon. I'd be as specific as possible. And here's what you can expect. Is it something you're interested in? If so, let us know. Yeah, make it as quick and short and sweet as possible. Oh yeah, I'm interested. Great. Here's the link to more information, and we're going to send you a video and ask you if you could just do a quick little video for us.
or I think, I don't know how many people, small retailers are online and have some of these tools. So those who are collecting still paper forms, resumes and whatnot, do you suggest keeping them, all of them, or keeping the ones that really were highlights, even though you didn't end up hiring them? Like, do you keep all these continue? Because obviously on a database, you can go back and it may not be easy to search, but you can keep them. But for those still using paper, do you suggest holding on to them or making some type of notes or?
It's like nails on a chalkboard when you tell me there's still people
I
using
know.
paper.
Yeah.
I know, and
It's
I get it. I get it. If you are really organized and you can keep files of them, great. But honestly, with AI and with so many tools that are very cost effective now, I would move to online. And you could even keep videos, online that you can refer back to. And even if I'm just throwing it out there because you might even be able to get something for free, depending upon your needs. But say at most, let's say it's $50, and I still think you can do something better than that. But say it's $50 a month, and say, okay, you think about that over a year's time, what that equals $600. Tell me that you have not spent a lot more than $600 in Indeed ads, in time, in frustration of training and retraining, that it's worth, even if you're not hiring all the time, to have this set up to keep a database of people who may be interested. Sometimes you have to think about it in that kind, those terms.
Yeah.
But it might not even be that much. There are lots of creative ways to set things up. I've been researching different ways with AI and playing. I'm not a coder, but playing with different things and been kind of piecing together things for some clients just to see what I can do if they're not at the point to invest in a whole ATS just yet.
Well, I think that, it's like what I had said, what happened with the pandemic is that it had a very swift way of going through and editing out old time retail philosophies. And like, I know a lot of people my age and older that had stores like weren't on social media because they weren't comfortable with it, did not have an up-to-date POS system, weren't online, didn't have an online presence. So when I say paper resumes, like those are the stores that I know that are just like, it's just that it's an older mentality. All the young stores and all the younger companies are all up to date, but there's still a lot of retailers that do it old school way. And it's like, those are the ones I always think about, like what happens, but it's, yes, it should be all automated by now. I mean, it's, but even AI, to most retailers, like people are just now starting to use it. And quite honestly, a lot of people, much like social media, like they just don't know. They get on it and they get frozen. I don't know what to ask it. I don't know. And I don't use AI that much, but I'm starting to use it more and more for design jobs. Like, hey, can you take this photo and put bookcases up on this wall, and it's interesting to see, but now it's just now starting to become the norm, I feel like, for a lot of retailers. So I had to ask that. Please tell me a little bit about, and this will be the last question. Is your book Hire still out? And tell everyone a little bit about it.
Yes, it is, and it's spelled HIREHIGHER, and it's available on Amazon. It is still there. I do plan to write a sequel, an updated one that now brings in my dream hire framework, because what I've over the last couple of years, I've taken the principles that I have in hire and what we've done with our clients and expanded on them, and it's turned into this, 5 stages, DREAM. But yes, it's still available. I'd love it if you supported me and
We'll make sure we have a link in
picked
it.
it up.
Make sure to get that out because if people would like a little bit more information, this is like the perfect book to get, as well as to be able to, where can people find you?
LinkedIn. The LinkedIn, Andrea Hoffer. If you go to LinkedIn, Andrea Hoffer, I'm extremely active. I do a weekly newsletter on Wednesdays that speaks about hiring and motivating your hourly team. It's very
Uh,
targeted towards hourly teams. And then my website is AHA Talent Experts. So AHA Talent Experts with an S.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I know our listeners are going to love this conversation, and we will have all of the links in the show notes so everyone can reach out and find you.
Great. Well, this was a lot of fun, Michelle. I enjoyed it as well.
So much.